So to start off, this is the eightfold path of policy proposal, known as the BARDAX process, which you learned in this course. This is not exactly how we're going to present our proposal, but a lot of the pieces are things that we identified in our project. So the first one is define the problem, and our next slide will be the problem statement, what we perceive to be the issue at Juniata, specifically to maybe a lack of cultural competency, lack of understanding, and we'll get into those specific issues. The second is assemble evidence, so that's our literature review. We looked at other schools who have similar programs, and we looked at the scholarly literature on what schools are doing in cultural competency, if that improves job training skills and things like that. Then construct the alternatives. Basically, we're going to show that our idea is the best idea, and it's better than what we currently have. The criteria is the course details, which we present with the syllabus and the course form. The outcomes, we're going to look at what our course will hopefully do for Juniata versus what would happen at Juniata if we didn't do anything. Confront the trade-offs. So on our last slide, or second last slide, we're going to look at some counter arguments of what people would say that they wouldn't like about our course, and we're going to kind of discredit them. And then we decide that this is salient and important, this is why we're doing this. And tell our story. We have a slide where we have lived experiences where each one of us are going to give a minute or so talk about why this is important to us and why we think this is important for the school.
Okay, so this is our problem statement. From the paper we wrote, many Juniata College students, and first-year students in particular, have not had sufficient opportunity to learn about and to critically understand individuals with different socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds from their own. And what this basically is telling us that we have a fractured social climate at Juniata College. We have a lot of courses in which professors are talking at us, basically telling us what to think, and our own viewpoints are being not having the chance to be explored in a lot of the classroom settings. So one thing we found was that when discussing outside issues in class with respects to politics, race, religion, gender, or sexuality, 4% of students have said that they've never had these kinds of discussions in their classrooms. 48% have said sometimes they've had these conversations. 34% said often, and 14% said very often. So we'd like to get that range into more of the often or very often categories, because we think what we learn is very useful once we leave here, and a lot of the things that we could be learning would affect us more in the outside world when we leave Juniata. And the major deficit to how the way things are ran now is we don't have a lot of time to think on our own about these kinds of subjects, gender, sexuality, race. It takes some real deep down thinking on your own part, but a lot of the times it takes discussing and exploring the opinions of others.
Yeah, and then also the excess and the deficit is going to be the main focal point of the project. Looking at, because we're not saying that Juniata doesn't have these policies right now, or they're not trying, we'll have some slide that. There are things that we're doing to try to alleviate this problem, but we believe they're not necessarily the right things to be doing. And that's why we highlighted the excess and the deficit, because yes, making people aware of the diversity and giving people the opportunity to listen to speakers, that's a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What we need more of is the ability to critically understand our own ideologies, our own socialization. That's why we want to develop the course.
So that's what we identified as our problem. So how are we going to address this problem? So we came up with a statement of what we want to achieve with this course that we created. In order to better prepare all students for a more civil and worldly life after Juniata College, we will create an academically holistic course that seeks to promote nuanced thought regarding cultural competency, civil discourse, and self-exploration, which are all issues that directly impact the well-being of our learning community.
For the rationale, we had as upperclassmen, we have a unique perspective. We also want to improve the Juniata community and explore the specific reasons for social divide, lack of understanding to find specific solutions.
Okay, so the next couple slides are briefly going to go over the academic sources that we found and why they're important to this course. So the one I found is, can higher education meet the needs of an increasingly diverse and global society? Campus diversity and cross-cultural workforce competencies. So basically the author found that we're living in a rapidly changing social climate because of increasing globalization and increasing technology. It's easier for people to move around, so more and more people are interacting with people that have different socioeconomic or cultural backgrounds from themselves. Because of this, universities have a responsibility to produce cross-culturally competent citizens who are able to interact with diverse populations in the workforce after school. Unfortunately, the author found that most universities in the United States are not achieving this goal, and we are producing students that have a significant lack of cultural competency and ability to interact with people that are different from them. And we found that Juniata is not an outlier in this data.
Okay, my source was very similar in terms of increasing globalization, workforce mobility, and international assignments in the professional fields. They created demand for culturally adept employees. The study that I examined looked at cultural intelligence training, and they found that there was a positive correlation related to the commitment and satisfaction of the course with the success and the improvements made to a person's cultural intelligence. So the importance of this study was to show that cultural intelligence is a skill in high demand in the workplace, and in order for people to be enthusiastic and to really buy into the idea that they should be learning this for course credit, is because it's really going to help them and assist them in job assignments if they go abroad, if they work with different kinds of people, because diversity is growing in our world, and you're more likely now to come across paths with someone in a professional field with a different background and ideas and beliefs different than you.
For the article that I looked at, it's called A Plea for Civil Discourse, Needed Academy's Leadership. And they had a definition of civil discourse, and it's listen to what others say, treat others' ideas with respect, and keep an open mind. And also, civil discourse should be an undergraduate education for students to learn practical tools involving active listening and public speaking.
For my article, it was actually written by a tenured professor at the University of Indiana in Bloomingdale, who's actually a biology professor. And I thought it was interesting because we kind of talked about how, and if you're a math or science professor, you might not understand how cultural competence is important to teach your students. So he actually explores that if professors don't foster diversity and cultural competence, then their students won't follow either, which I thought was really interesting. It doesn't really matter if you're a biology POE major, you have to be able to work with different people in any field that you're in. So.
Mine was the impact of the undergraduate diversity course required on students' social views and attitudes. And this author looked at those students who were taking courses on their own and going to workshops on their own. They didn't actually have a course, but what's taken from it is why it's important. So they looked at how they were more likely to grow in their active thinking process just by them going to these workshops willingly. Then they also improved chance for succeeding in the increasingly diverse society, which is important for anyone. And then the exposure to cultural competency courses improves post-college leadership skills. So these people who are going to these workshops on their own are making themselves a better future for when they're in their workforce, because everyone's going to interact with everyone. So that's the main point of this one. And the reason why I chose it was because it was people willingly, and if they saw such positive impact on those people, if you put them in a course that's required, that you will see a much more positive for everyone surrounding you. So the article that I looked at is titled The Examination of Cultural Sensitivity, an Exhibition of Cultural Competence for Faculty at Liberal Arts Institutions Within Higher Education. So this this study used surveys and questionnaires and sent them to several liberal arts colleges, and it asked faculty what they thought their level of cultural sensitivity was. And then also with these surveys and questionnaires, it determined their actual level of cultural sensitivity. And it split faculty into 5 different discipline categories, which included the humanities, natural sciences, social sciences, business, and education disciplines. And the results were that the perceived level of cultural sensitivity was a lot higher than the actual level of cultural sensitivity. And between different disciplines, I was surprised to find that there was not much variety in this. So natural sciences versus social sciences both were functioning at a minimalization stage, which the article defines as a stage where differences are not recognized and valued, and as a result, uniformity prevails. And when this prevails, the result is an environment that does not foster the progression and development of all students. So, like Olivia was saying in her article, if faculty do not practice cultural sensitivity or cultural competence in the classroom, how are the students expected to learn and grow using cultural sensitivity?
So we looked at other institutes of higher ed that have programs like this. I looked at University of California, Los Angeles, which when you try to compare it to Juniata College, you're like, what do we have in common? Because it's a huge school. Well, you would think that they'd have a very big because they're a diverse population, you would think they'd have this, but they didn't. And the reason why I chose this was because, of course, when I Googled, it was one of the first ones to come up because news stations just like started to pick up on the students. So the students were the ones who were forcing this change. They had some professors behind them, but the students were the ones like, we need diversity courses. So they came up with this, which is when you have to have a C in a course. Now this, they don't have specific courses like, say with like minority experiences. This, they put it in all different courses, so they actually have 200 plus courses that this actually qualifies for, and they're hoping to add more. So that way it doesn't add credits to your thing, so that's not an excuse to not take them. They just made the classes that they had more focused on diversity, so they didn't take anything away, they just created more options, which gives the students a wider range of being able to choose what they want to take without it doing anything, which is one of the reasons I'm supportive, because Juniata College does a lot of stuff with student movement, and since theirs was mostly from the students, I figured it was important that we look at it too.
So I focused on Susquehanna University, and the demographics of that college are similar to Juniata, small liberal arts college. And they have a global opportunities program where every student is required to either have an experience abroad or have a domestic experience that lasts at least 2 weeks. And this is to gain a cross-cultural experience of some sort. And it includes pre-departure classes, so before the experience happens, the experience itself, and then a post-experience self-reflection class, which is 2 semester hours. And the goals of the program is to have students recognize how their attitudes, beliefs, and choices affect the quality of their cross-cultural experiences. So how do they themselves play into the environment around them, and reflect on their personal growth, social responsibility, and the value of active participation in human society. So I think these are really key goals that we also would like to accomplish. Especially the self-reflection class afterwards, we thought had merit to try to incorporate into our course that we've created.
I looked at Green River College, which was in Washington, and I found that in fall of 2011, they started this where students must take a diversity course in order to receive a degree.
The school I looked at was the University of Scranton. Scranton is another fellow landmark conference school, very similar to ours. Under their general education requirements, you have to take 6 credits of diversity courses in order to get your degree.
I looked at Moravian College. Moravian is a Centennial Conference school that we play in football. They had a program very similar to the CWS program at Juniata. You know, it's a first-year seminar. It could last a semester. It could be a year long. And it's a platform centered around social issues and topics that, you know, could be affecting students every day and just goes unnoticed at the college. You know, you see someone walking, you don't know what's affecting them. But it centered around social issues such as poverty, racism, substance abuse, sexual assault, and introduction to peace and justice studies. So I think that's a really good kind of exploration for students who may not be exposed to peace and justice studies already. I think it would be a great introduction to them. And they explore these topics through critical thinking, reflection, discussion, and public speaking.
I look at Juniata College, which is also a very similar institution to Juniata, located half an hour outside Philadelphia. All first-year students at Earth Science are required to take a 2-semester course that brings academic inquiry to bear on the central questions of liberal education. And the website indicates that students engage in conversations from diverse historical contexts, cultures, beliefs, selected with thoughtful examination. The more I looked into it, it was not really what we're trying to do, especially because it wasn't specifically focused on diversity. It was more just taking a diverse range of texts, whereas us, we're really trying to focus on the self and interaction with others.
So Juniata's current approach, we identified several ways that Juniata tries to use cultural competency to teach the students. And this is not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the main things that we identified. So Beyond Tolerance, we have both a class for Beyond Tolerance and a series of speakers that come in. Cultural analysis, which is part of the requirements to graduate. You have to take a cultural analysis class. Peace certification, the Stewards of Diversity, Club Prism, and bias response team. So we thought these were some of the important things that Juniata is doing to promote cultural competency. For our lived experiences, one thing that I thought about, I assisted in helping with, I helped with United Not Divided, and I thought it was interesting because personally, when I went into it, I'm a social work POE, so I thought that I'd have a little bit more confidence going into it, but I was very nervous, not afraid, but worried that I'd be uncomfortable and whatnot going into it. And so at times I questioned, oh, should I do this? But I realized that it would be going out of my comfort zone would help me. That's when I think you really learn and grow the most. So I was able to participate in United Not Divided. Afterwards, we collected like a little questionnaire about how people thought the event went, and we got very positive reactions to it. But one of the statements that a lot of students made was there didn't seem to be a huge variety in viewpoints of the students that attended, and we thought that this might be because in the past their opinions have been attacked or put down. So for fear of this, they didn't show up. So we thought that having this mandatory class would help create an environment where everyone could feel safe and participate, and yes, feel uncomfortable, but learn and grow in that discomfort.
For my lived experience, I thought about the banners that were put up, and I know a lot of people on campus, there was conflict with putting the banners up, and especially I heard a lot of people say, you know, like all lives matter, and then, you know, some of the signs say like Asian lives matter, Black lives matter, and Brown lives matter, and it was a big controversy, and I feel that, or I felt that there was not a reason for putting up banners, and I think if there was a reason for, or if somebody gave a reason for putting up banners, I think more people would have understood like why the banners were put up and like why people were saying Black Lives Matter and Brown Lives Matter, because at the time those were the targets or people being targeted. And so yes, all lives matter, but these were the people being targeted and that need our support. So I feel that with more reasoning and more people talking to one another about these situations, there can be less tension between people.
I was looking at student activism, which goes along with that. I feel that we do try to do a lot to get people involved, to let them know, but a lot of times things just happen. So like I know with the lay down, a lot of people were just really confused as to why people were just laying down. So like, and I wasn't here for that, but I knew about it because people told me off campus, but for the sheets personally, like I knew what was going on, but I never really thought to like look more into it. I'm like, oh, like Black Lives Matter, like that makes sense, and I just like moved on. But I didn't really learn why it was so important until I was in one of my classes where we talked about it, and like I just never realized it. And a lot of people just don't think because they don't know. So this class would help with that. And because I was in the class, I've actually learned to look more into social movements, so that I actually understand what it is, so I can get both sides and be educated on it.
My lived experience centers around the paper we wrote in Minority Experiences. So I came from a very liberal household, and that's kind of the political ideology I grew up with. So I was never exposed to conservative viewpoints or people who express that at all. So having like that self-exploration of racial and ethnic identity and political identity and realizing these things for the first time was very eye-opening. I mean, I knew about them, but I didn't like know about them. They weren't at the forefront of my mind. And I feel like the course that we are going to create will allow people just to bring these things to awareness in the first place. So yeah, that paper really opened my eyes, and that was a major lived experience for me at Juniata.
My lived experiences consisted of athletes required of all sports meeting with Jody Althouse, who is the director of The Spot, a new service on campus in Dallas. What really stuck out with me was how she brought the awareness to local issues such as sexual assault, everyday college struggles, stress, ways to handle these issues responsibly. And along with that, she teaches ethical behavior as being a part of the situation, or how to properly intervene and stop a person from being sexually assaulted by disrupting the situation and keeping it from escalating any further. And she called this being an active bystander, which I think is a great skill to learn for a person in this kind of social climate. It doesn't just apply to sexual assault. You can stop someone being persecuted because of their race, sexuality, or anything. All it takes is one person to intervene. So I think that's a huge takeaway from that exercise.
I grew up in a very conservative household, and I'm from a very conservative area, very conservative. So when I got here, I will admit that I had a lot of preconceived stereotypes, preconceived notions about people that I had never met. And it wasn't until I got involved in social work and I started taking classes with Cy and Beth and Susan that I started to understand just how biased I really was. And I feel bad for students that don't have the opportunity to take these classes because you might not ever get rid of those stereotypes and preconceived notions. And so yeah, I just thank you. We were kind of interested in knowing what other students at Juniata thought, and I kind of stumbled on this as I was doing research. These are pulled from niche.com, which is a college review site for students. And some of these are all pulled from this site, so they're all within the last 4 years. Some are good, some are not so good. So I'm just going to read them. There are more conservative students on campus than one will realize. They just learn not to voice their opinions as much as their liberal students because they really can't. If you happen to be a minority, especially a racial minority, Juniata will adore you. Basically, you can almost get away with anything, academically and socially. There's many cases where minority students have been given more chances than students that are white. It's unfair. And then you have the good ones, which everyone is very accepting of each other. There are diversity discrepancies among different student groups and clubs based on personal bias. But the president is working to create support systems and open forums to better understand and manage the issue. Lots of diversity, they strive for it. Lots of liberal people here, liberal arts college. Many different religions and ethnicities. There are a lot of LGBTQ people here, and it is very accepted. So you see different ends of the kind of spectrum.
And that really highlights the fractured social climate that we're in, that there's very two extreme polarities that are banging heads, and that is really why this course is in need, because we need to kind of quell that polarization. So our specific course. First is just the registrar's course form and kind of going over some specifics of what we think would be good for this course. So the title is The Self and Other, Understanding Who We Are and How We Came to Be. So the focus is mainly on self-exploration, understanding how we were socialized. So coming from a conservative background, coming from a liberal background, rural, urban, things that we took for granted as a child and now have to confront at Juniata because it's imperative for our ability to interact with people that are different from us, especially if you're not aware of these things. So it would be a first-year course, 2 credits in the spring, and our idea is that students that would be in CWS for their first semester, or if they're taking a year-long CWS course, but either way, they would continue into this class together. So the idea is that the students would have a comfortability level with each other already, because confronting some of these issues can be really challenging and difficult and sometimes embarrassing. So to have a group of people that you've already spent 3.5 months with will maybe foster more discussion than people just thrown together at once. It would be in the H category. So our catalog description is, in an ever-changing, increasingly fractured modern social climate, there's never been a more pertinent time to critically understand why we do what we do and why we think what we think. This course seeks to develop student skills related to cultural competency and civil discourse by providing them the tools to explore identities related to, but not limited to, culture, race, religion, gender, and politics. And then this is a tentative syllabus. I won't read everything in the syllabus, it's just kind of something we created. Like I said, it's an understanding of socialization into different ideological systems, a focus on awareness, and that's the main thing that we're talking about with deficit access. The access is giving the students the ability to just become aware of these issues, because if you're not aware of these issues, how are you supposed to grapple with them, challenge them, understand them if you don't even know they're there? So the course goals, this required first-year course, aim to get first-year students thinking about and hopefully even challenging their preconceived notions about who they are and who they want to be. I had some ideas about method of instruction. Would be faculty members who prepare some lectures on these issues, lead active discussions, and also allow students the opportunity to engage in personal reflection. So the whole class doesn't have to be the professor just talking at the students, but it can be maybe half the class, professor says, today we're going to talk about issues related to sexual assault. And then for the rest of the class, the students can go on the internet, do some reading about sexual assault, and maybe write like a brief summary of like what they thought about the day and things like that. And then having a couple presentations, maybe take home final. But really the focus is on discussion and personal reflection.
Okay, so some of the positive implications through incorporating this course into our Juniata curriculum would be students would develop skills in cultural competency, which would make them able to thrive in cross-cultural settings in their professional career once they leave Juniata. It would give them skills in civil discourse, the ability to disagree respectfully with others, regardless if their opinion is the same or different from theirs. And then generally, it'll make us more understanding and accepting of those differing from you and viewpoints. Very important with civil discourse and cultural competency to understand that not everybody is the same. This will also bring about one Juniata community that we were basically sold on coming here. The close-knit group, the student population always together, always doing things together and pushing forward together is something that can be, brought back through this kind of mitigating a cultural divide almost on this campus would definitely bring one Juniata community back to how it was. And then it would encourage professors to connect content to a real world setting. And I always found that courses in which professors did this were definitely more interesting and kind of gave you more motivation to go there and to do well because you knew the skills that you were learning would help you further down the road.
Some known course is moving outcomes. It's continued to have a fractured social climate on campus. The continuance of ignorance toward other viewpoints. Resentment or hatred of Juniata for false claims of fostering diversity and competence, which Juniata is still trying to rebrand themselves. No working with that. Pent up anger and frustration for not being heard or appreciated, which that came really liked for this election, like that was a big thing on campus. And professors will continue to neglect important outside material, which that's more towards like subjects that we would think connect to social ones, like if we're gonna talk about like certain sciences and maths, like how does that have to do with it? Well, you gotta connect them. You can't just be like, well, that's social work. I'm just gonna work on math. But you gotta connect it all so that everyone has an equal chance to learn.
So, one argument that people might bring up when introducing this course is, will I have time to fit in my schedule? If you're in the sciences and you have a pretty much set schedule that you need to fill all these requirements and there's not a lot of wiggle room, where do I fit this? That's why we created it to be a 2-credit course, to be 2 hours per week, 1 hour twice a week. And this is so that you can fit in your class. And then also, since IA is being discussed to being taken out, that leaves, it would only take up an additional 1 credit. Also, a question might be, does this mean that different ideologies are going to be forced upon me? And we want to say no. That this class is more of a reflection class, thinking about your own personal experiences and applying them and talking with others. Less of a, let's just talk at you about cultural competency, which, as we defined, is we thought of excess on this campus and address the deficiency, which is have a safe environment to discuss and talk about this issue.
Another kind of argument that we kind of talked about would be that, well, I'm a math PE, like, why do I need to know about cultural competence if it doesn't apply to me? We argue that the population here at Juniata is increasingly diverse, and the world is diverse. You might be a math PE, you might become an accountant, but your clients might think differently than you. And I think even if you are a math PE or a science PE or an anthropology, you have to be able to deal with people that are different from you. Just because you're not, in social work, you're not in sociology, you're not in psychology, you have to be able to understand that not everyone thinks the same way that you do. And also, some people argue that diversity training doesn't work. We argue that it does. Literature review shows that producing cultural competent citizens should be a high priority for higher educational institutions because classes that are implemented do make a difference.
Specifically in the ability for students to have leadership skills. We found that across 2 or 3 different articles where they're saying that the students who engaged in cultural competency courses and engaged in these activities during their undergraduate career, even if they didn't have those opportunities in high school, if they came from very sheltered backgrounds where they didn't have this exposure, even if they engaged in these practices in college, their post-college leadership skills significantly improved. And that was in a couple of the articles that we looked at. And then just as a concluding statement, this is the last paragraph of our paper, it is to summarize our course and our presentation. We do not wish for the student population to conform to a single set of standards. That's not our goal. Rather, we wish every individual Juniata student, regardless of socioeconomic or cultural background, to be able to civilly interact with and respect one another. Exploring one's personal history and socialization into ideology is the first step. The following involves learning to understand and appreciate other people's socialization and ideology without judgment. And the final step involves implementation. To use the tools learned in our proposed first-year course to civilly interact with another on a daily basis while pursuing a liberal arts degree from Juniata College. That's our vision, and that's a better Juniata community.
Wow. Thank you so much.
I clap too.
Guests, do you have questions for our crew?
So talk to me a little bit about who you imagine teaching this course, from where we would draw the faculty, what kind of faculty development we might need, you know, if you have somebody in mind or you want all of us to teach it, or kind of what your thoughts are about that.
So possibly those who already teach CWS, plus those who are in the social sciences, humanities backgrounds would be the primary focus.
You had it as an H class though.
Yeah.
So would you want it as an H and an S? Do you want social scientists, like the three
Yeah,
of us, to be able to teach it?
Yeah, we could put an extra S on that, yeah.
Why CWS? Tell me more about that.
Well, that would be because that's the emphasis on the first year course. So
Yeah.
we want students to be exposed to these issues as early as possible.
So are you thinking it could, in fact, feel like a year-long experience where CWS sort of grounds you in how to write and think like a college student,
Exactly.
and then propels you into using those skills to really engage with diversity and inclusion in thoughtful ways?
That's our idea,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially, and then also the comfortability of the people in class as well.
Did you know the faculty have been talking about this for the last few months? I mean, specifically this, of having a second semester, first-year seminar that would ask some of the perennial questions of human existence and really grapple. I assume you
And
talked
one of
about this.
our two guests this semester were Susan Prill and Carol Peters, and they came
Oh,
and
okay.
talked about the process.
I thought it was just like magic, and then
It's magic with a lot of hard work.
That was one of my questions too, with a year-long experience. Were you thinking with the CWS that the congruency between the professor and the relationship between the CWS professor and the students would allow an easy transition into these subjects, but also bringing in another faculty member, maybe from social sciences, to help like co-teach? Is that what you're envisioning?
We haven't specifically thought of that idea, but that's actually a great idea because then you get that second perspective.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, you may.
Okay. So I have a couple questions, I think. In one of my mediation classes, we've been having a very similar conversation. How can we kind of introduce a new curriculum that might persuade students to be more culturally aware of each other, expand their worldviews, regardless of their background and where they come from? And so one of the ideas that we kind of had was in looking to create more role models on campus, we would have like a TA position that would correspond with the course, that would allow potentially an upperclassman student who had already gone through the class, who had exhibited, you know, cultural awareness and an interest in further engaging in these matters, to then lead conversations. Either like CWS has like the evening meetings, or like having smaller group sessions that would kind of break down the groups, allow students to engage with one another. Because originally we had thought of having like a large group. Have you guys thought about potentially including upperclassmen and other students in this curriculum to kind of engage students not only within the freshman class but throughout Juniata's campus entirely, or?
Yeah, well, we actually talked about a little bit about CWS's current structure and how the CWS lab is, from our perspective, kind of ineffective in the sense that the lab leaders don't have much instruction. So I felt like when we went to CWS lab, there wasn't much academic stuff going on.
Okay.
So definitely using that structure, but more in a more beneficial way to what you're saying, would definitely be something that would work points.
We thought a lot about potentially having like an internship position for older students who wanted to work with students, and then they would be held accountable to have like research or world cafes or asking questions that would engage the students that they then had to present, say at LAS or some other way that they could additionally inform the campus about what they've learned within small groups.
And that would make them engaged and
Yes.
give that an incentive to be engaged.
Yes.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your hard work, your presentation, and your paper turned in a week early. You're so wrong. You're so wrong.
We thought it was due today, so.
I'm right. It's a moment when I'm glad I was unclear. This works for me. Thank you so much for all of your efforts this semester. This is a terrific proposal, and we will get this edited and out to folks along with your handouts. I think you've done some really important work here from the student's perspective, and that helps us be, as faculty, be less siloed in our thoughts of what we know to work for students. You've told us what you think would work for you, and that's greatly appreciated.
If I could just say one more thing, we've talked about, the faculty are going to keep obviously thinking and talking about this and various ways to begin to engage students. So to Sai's point, we'll take your presentation and all of this and share it, but there might be opportunities for you to make the presentation again, or at least come to some of the gatherings and talk with faculty or with other students about your ideas as well, so that it develops some momentum if you're amenable. So.
That would be terrific, and not everyone's a senior, so that would totally work.
Oh, yeah.
Who's gonna see it?
Not everyone.
I was thinking even next semester we'll probably have opportunities.
You will carry on the torch, Sarah. Please have donuts. There are lots of donuts, and thank you again. Excellent,
Thanks.
excellent work.